Let's get ready to stitch out a design. I'm going to use the Elna Expressive 830. Great machine. Love it. This is the design I'm working on. I've got my thread loaded up and ready to go. I'm going to switch this so I can see exactly what I'm working on. And I'm going to go grab the hoop and place it on the machine. I've already decided where I want the stitching to go on the back of the jacket. But I'm going to show you over here. I want to stitch around the frame to hold the fabric in place. And because it is such a detailed stitching, I'm going to do 2 lines around it, an inner and an outer. So we'll get that started and you can see how that works. Put my presser foot down, make sure there's nothing underneath the hoop and everything's free to move, and we'll get started. I'm going to clip some threads and then we'll get started. All right, I've got to go back to my machine and switch this out. You can see it's moved over to the center, and that's where it's going to be. And we're going to start with the tanker, which I've decided to do in this light gray. If you do that, you can see the whole program again. But this shows you what you're stitching out. So let's begin. All right, I've got the first part stitched out. If you come over here, we're going to start stitching out the other color. We're not doing orange. This will be a darker gray. So I'll get the machine loaded up and we'll start with the next step. I've got the machine loaded up. You can see the 2 different contrasting colors. And that's what we're going to be stitching out. And let's get her going. As you can see, there are 26,290 stitches in this design. Supposedly it will take 39 minutes, but by the time you adjust for switching out the color threads and making sure everything's perfect, it does take longer, but it is nice that you don't have to take it off the hoop, off the machine, to clip any material as you do in applique. So this just stitches everything out. I don't like to leave the machine because if something happens, you can hear it right away and stop the machine before it does any damage to the design or the fabric. So I usually stay very close. So I'm getting ready to sew the interior of the cab. I'm going to sew it in a really dark blue on this dark fabric. But I don't want to use a white bobbin thread because sometimes you get pull through onto the front of your fabric. I'm going to wind a bobbin with black bobbin thread and insert it into the machine. And that way, if there is any pull through, you won't notice it. I will also use the black bobbin thread when I do the black part of the truck, the tires and such forth. So I'm going to wind me up a bobbin and we'll get started with the interior of the truck. Right, we're going to get ready to do the cab in red and the red stripes. Now these 2 little spots up here, I'm going to do those when my machine gets there. I'm going to do those in dark gray. I just don't want them done in red because I don't know any red caps that are on top of trucks. So I'll do everything else in red, but when I get there, I will stop the machine and reload some darker gray thread for those. Okay, so you can see where I'm at. I'm getting ready to do those top little tanker caps, but I don't want them in red, so I'm going to change my thread to the dark gray. Like I said, the really dark gray, and do those caps, and then I'll have to switch it back to red so I can continue on with the tanker lines that should be in red. So I'm going to switch out the dark colored thread on there. I'm going to do those couple of caps on the top of the tank, and we'll get it going. I'm going to snip that long thread, but just so you know, you don't have to follow any colors. You know, the pattern is yours. You bought it. You change the colors to what you want. I get a lot of questions about, well, what about colors? Would this go? Would that go? It's your project. You do whatever you want. All right, you can see the little plus sign down here. We've stitched out the caps. There's really not that much of a difference, but I did not want them in red. So we're going to stitch out the lines. I've got to switch out the thread and we'll go from there. All right, I've got the red on. We're going to start stitching out some design lines on the tanker. So here we go. All right, we finished with the red lines. Looks great. Now it wants to stitch out what appears to be the air horns. So I am going to switch to my gray again, almost silver, and we're going to stitch those out. All right, I've got the air horns and the side mirror on, and now it looks like I need to stitch out the headlights. So I'm going to probably use the same dark color gray for the headlights, and we're going to go from there. You can see the overall picture. It's the headlights, so we're going to use the same color gray. Well, I switched to the darker gray just to give it a little bit of contrast, although it will be outlined, but it will give it a little bit of contrast. So here we go. All right, that one's done. Let's see what we're going to look for next. It looks like, gosh, it's tiny and small. I'm not really sure. I'm going to refer back to my picture on my phone that I took of the design so I can see what it needs to be. I'll be right back. All right, I touched my screen and it got rid of the little plus sign that shows us where we're at in our design. And it appears that we're going to stitch out the cab lights. So I'm going to change to orange because the lights on the front of the truck, the marker lights, are orange. So that's what I'm going to do. All right, as you can see, there's going to be a lot of black detail on here. So we'll get started. All right, we've got the overall design done. And now I added some lettering. So I'm going to stitch that out in black. Well, I've got the finished product done. I'll take it off the embroidery machine, clip all the threads, take the extra stabilizer off on the inside, and we'll be done. I'll show you that picture when I get there. There's the finished product. All the threads are clipped and the stabilizer is removed, and I'm going to start on my next project, so have a great day.